Welcome to the LDHR Podcast, where ministry leaders grow together. Over the next few months, we will be releasing episodes intermittently alongside our other series to talk about growing on purpose, highlighting the people and pathways for growing where you are and with what you've been entrusted. Through these episodes, you'll hear from people with insights and practical steps that you can apply right away. You'll also have the opportunity to find out more about the resources that are available to you and how you can intentionally grow on purpose wherever God has you. Come on in and listen. We're so glad you're here. Steve Morgan, welcome to the LDHR Podcast. I'm so glad you're able to join me today. As we begin, could you please share just a little bit about your crew journey and the role that you are currently serving in?
Sure, I'd love to. I've been on staff for about 42 years, but I grew up helping my dad in sports camps. I always loved teaching and coaching kids in basketball skills and just fundamentals. But, Beth, it was so much more than that. I felt like I was giving them hope and encouragement that they could change anything in their lives. And the best part of the week was giving them a ribbon at the end of the week, seeing the smile on their face. I guess I kind of became addicted to that. And when I grew up, I wanted to be a teacher and a coach, just like my dad. But in high school, I would say I really kind of lost my way. There were a glut of teachers and coaches at that time, and they didn't get paid much. So I kind of decided in high school to be a CPA. I was good in math, but mostly because my friend's dad was a CPA and they lived in a nicer and a bigger house. But my freshman year of college, I met Jesus. He turned my life right side up again. I didn't really feel, though, that I had that kind of personality that God could use. I was quiet and introverted, but I went on a summer project with crew before my senior year of college. Really, for the first time, I shared my faith, and much to my surprise, many people come to Christ. That summer, I decided I would join staff with crew. I worked in the campus ministry most of my time on staff, met my wife on campus. We worked 20 years in Latin America. And it was one day in my kitchen in Puebla that it dawned on me. I remember right where I was standing. I've been teaching and coaching all my life, just not in the way that I had thought I was going to do it originally. But I just felt the Lord was so gracious to connect me with my heart's desire of that little boy. My heart has always been in leadership development. And I guess giving people hope for changed lives kind of gives me hope that my life can change. Since 2012, we moved back to the US. Officially, I've been on the global LDHR team. So that's a little bit of my story.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your story. And I love how God brought back that desire you had when you were young to be a coach and realizing you have done that. That's awesome. So today we are continuing on in our Growing on Purpose series, and we're going to talk about another helpful growth tool called the Myers Briggs Type Indicator, or the MBTI. To start us off, what first drew you to the Myers Briggs, and why has it been so meaningful to you?
To be honest, my first exposure to Myers Briggs was in Mexico. I didn't really love it at first. It really kind of felt like it got used more as a club against people. Someone would say something or do something, and another person would say, "Oh, okay, well, that's just because you're a, whatever, fill in the four letters."
Mm,
It just felt so reductive. It felt so put in a box and really unkind. But, as I look back, I think the experience was less about the tool itself and more about the immaturity of how it was being used. In an earlier podcast I listened to that you had Terry on, Beth,
yeah.
talking about feedback. Over time, I really came to see Myers Briggs for what it really is. It's just a wonderful feedback tool for self awareness, for staying healthy as a leader. And those two things are really close to my heart. I'm really giving my life to leadership development, and you can't develop what you don't understand, right?
Mm,
So, learning to understand yourself, how you're wired, what drains you, what restores you, I don't really think those things are a luxury. They're really essential to showing up well as a leader. And I've seen so many leaders, and honestly, including myself at times, that are not very aware about how they show up. They may be leading, they may have a position, but the question we all need to ask ourselves is, am I becoming a leader worth following? I think the Myers Briggs, coupled with the coaching, can really help a person answer that question in a real positive and healthy way.
Makes a lot of sense. I like what you said there. You can't develop what you don't understand, and that it can be that feedback tool for us personally to
Hmm.
be like a mirror so we can understand, so we can grow and develop. A number of personality tools out there, and we've actually talked about a few of them here on the podcast. What makes Myers Briggs distinct, and what are some of the key benefits of someone discovering their type?
Okay, this is kind of true confessions here. This is just between us, right?
Yep, just between
Okay.
you and me.
Terry and I were kind of unashamed LDHR nerds. We actually used to give our kids a different personality assessment as a Christmas present each year.
Wow.
So, Strength Finders 1 year, Berkman 1 year, Myers Briggs, Enneagram.
Mhm.
But, curiously, what we found, even just within our family, was remarkable. It really gave us a shared language as a family instead of like, oh, why do you always do that? Or why do you always think that way? We started more to ask, help me understand why you said what you said or why you do what you do, how you're wired. It made our conversations less feel like a personal attack and more like genuine curiosity about how each person is wired in the family. That just feels good. That
Mhm.
draws the connection tighter. So, what works in a family also works on a team. People understand that, a family member or a spouse or a teammate's behavior isn't just kind of some random thing that they're doing to irritate you, that there's actually a reason behind it that makes sense to them. When you can really understand and get your mind wrapped around that, I think it really builds compassion. I think one of the greatest gifts Myers Briggs has given me personally, and what I love seeing it do in the leaders and the teams that I coach.
That's great. Let's zoom out for a minute and get a bigger picture about the MBTI. It is rooted in Carl Jung's theory that personality isn't random, but patterned through different attitudes and functions. These often show up as a set of letters that can feel a little bit overwhelming at first. Can you help us simplify what those letters really mean?
Sure. I always like to tell people don't let the letters intimidate you. At its core, Myers Briggs is really just 4 pairs of preferences. So you have the EI, extroversion and introversion. And that's just really about how you get recharged or where you direct and receive your energy. The next 2 pairs are both mental functions. The S and the N, or the sensing and intuition, is about what kind of information you naturally trust when
Mm.
you're going to make a decision. The T and the F, I said this morning to someone, thinking preference people, they feel, and the feeling preference people, they think. But when it comes to decision, they filter it through a different lens because the T and F is just about how you come to your conclusions. And then lastly, the J and the P, the judging and perceiving, is really about how you like to organize and move through life, how you like to do life. Now, you've heard me say or use the word preference, and I do that very intentionally. I love a little exercise to people that I'm coaching, and it really is an aha moment for them. I say, okay, grab a pen right now and sign your name. And they do that, and, easy, right?
Mhm.
And then I say, okay, now switch hands and try it.
That's going to
And
turn out quite messy.
yes, right? But you can still do it, right?
Yeah.
It just is not as comfortable because it's not your wired preference. You can do it, but it takes a little more effort, more concentration, and doesn't quite feel as natural. That's all Myers Briggs really is, not measuring your ability.
Mm.
And actually, there's a lot of things it doesn't measure about you, but it's looking at what comes naturally, what your wired preferences are all about.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you put it at the beginning, it's just 4 pairs of preferences. That seems
Mhm.
much more tangible. Okay, just 4 different areas that we're looking at and what
Yep.
you prefer. So I know sometimes people can feel a little bit boxed in by personality labels. How do you help people see their type as a starting point for growth rather than a limitation?
The first thing I tell any leader I'm coaching through Myers Briggs is this: don't let an assessment put you in a box. Don't let it define you. It's really only like one spoke of an umbrella. It can't define you, it can't give you your identity. No, really, no assessment can do that. There's a lot of things it's not going to tell you. It doesn't really tell you your walk with God. It doesn't tell you whether you're living or walking in the Spirit. It doesn't really capture the fullness of who you are. But what it can do is open a door. And I love how Steve Cuss puts it in Managing Leadership Anxiety. He says that self awareness is like a door that you walk through. And so the Myers Briggs gives you that awareness. But once you walk through the door, you begin to have new eyes and new ways of seeing. Actually, that's where the real work begins. So I always have the leader I'm coaching verify the results for themselves. The assessment is really good, but depending on how they answer the questions at the time, it can get you wrong. So the leader really knows themselves best. You get to decide your own preferences. In other words, the tool serves you, not the other way around.
Mhm. That really resonates with me. I like the perspective that the tool is there to serve you, not you
Mhm.
serving the tool. And so
Yes.
recognize what are my preferences. I think from my experience, there's been times of particular stress or different circumstances that I've taken an assessment and realized that is not my preference, but that's where I've had to act out of due to a
Hmm.
circumstance and kind of refining it in that way to say, what is actually my preference? So again, we talked about
Right.
again this word preference, and Myers-Briggs makes a point to say it's not designed to predict performance, but again, it's about preferences and satisfaction. Can you just dive in a little bit deeper to why that distinction is so important and how can it actually help someone grow?
That is a really great distinction that I think is really freeing. So, if Myers Briggs were about performance, it could become a ceiling, actually.
Mm,
Like, oh, you're an introvert, so, don't really expect much in leadership. It's not really about that, about performance. Although will say it will help, the understanding and awareness will really help your performance in life and leadership. So Myers Briggs is about really understanding what energizes you, what drains you, where you naturally thrive. I've seen leaders grind away for years in rhythms that just seem to wear them down. But when they finally understood their type, all those 4 letters together, it wasn't an excuse to the way that they were acting. It was more of a map to set direction and help them say, what, I think I need to structure my week differently. Or, I need to stop pretending that what I'm doing is sustainable because it's actually is not. That kind of self awareness doesn't limit our performance, it unlocks it, I think. I remember a position focus coaching conversation with Andrea, the VP, at that time when I was leading the GLOW LDHR team. She challenged me to set aside a 2-hour block of time in my week just to think. Then she held me to it. And, I don't report to her anymore. She's not in that role, but that simple habit was so life giving to me. And it's something that I still do to this day every week.
that's fantastic. I really resonate with that. I also had a leader who challenged me to take time to think, to get the
Hmm.
big picture. And that
Yeah.
really transformed a lot on how I approached different things. Steve, how have you seen Myers Briggs help individuals grow personally? And how does it shape the way teams understand and work with one another?
Mm, that's a great question, and something I really get excited about because it's not just a theoretical understanding. This is the kind of stuff that plays out in real time in real teams every day and in marriages and in relationships. I like to draw from some of my friends, Giant Worldwide, and they've done some really fascinating work with Myers Briggs. They actually distilled the 16 different Myers Briggs types down to like 5 voices. It's fascinating. But one of the helpful distinctions for me that they make is this: some voices are more present oriented and others are future oriented. So if you're familiar with the Myers Briggs and have your ST, those 2 middle letters types, they're more detailed, analytical thinkers, what Giant would call the guardians of an organization. And guardians aren't resistant to change just because they're trying to be difficult. They're resistant because they deeply care about protecting what's been built. They might say, not out loud, but I'll follow this new vision or restructure or decision. But first, you got to tell me how it's going to affect the mission that I've given my life to. If you're familiar with the Myers Briggs, your SF types are the sensors with a feeling preference. They're the nurturers of the organization, of the world.
Mm.
And they'll follow the vision too, but they need to know, what does this mean for the people that I care about? How is this decision going to affect me and others that I love? Here's why this matters so much in teams. So your STs and your SFs together, they make up roughly about 75% of the population.
Mhm.
That's pretty significant. The other 25% are more future oriented voices. Your NTs are usually your pioneers, the intuitive, quick thinking. The introverted NFs, like I am, your creatives. Your extroverted NF are more the connectors with people. And often, many times, these are the kind of people that end up in leadership. So picture this scenario: a visionary leader, he's casting vision about an exciting decision or exciting future, but he may be speaking the language that only 8% of the people in the room speak or understand, and not wondering why the other 75% of people aren't on board. It's not rebellion. It's not a lack of faith. It's not like they're not willing to take this leap of faith. So the leader really has to build a bridge to those present voices, the STs and the SFs, that they can actually cross. They want the bridge built first and know that the organization they love is going to be okay, or the people that they love are going to be okay. I wish I had understand that 25 years ago, during a time when Terry and I were struggling so much in our relationship. I was a creative visionary. I'm coming up with new ideas, new visions. She actually really wanted to make those dreams a reality, but I just kept going too fast and thinking, no, you can't just stick a spoke in my bicycle wheels. But she was actually on the back trying to make the dreams become a reality, like a tandem bike. And I was pedaling so fast in front, I didn't even realize that her legs were broken behind me, just trying to keep up with all my ideas and vision and reality. And, I was the one that was breaking her legs.
Mhm.
I just needed really to draw on her more present voice of the love that she had for people, and just slow down a little bit so that people actually felt heard and felt valued and felt cared for as we went to my new vision or dream. So this is real stuff, Beth. It really affects people in deep ways. I tell you, once you really get an understanding and it grips your heart, it is a new way of living.
Thank you for sharing a little bit about your experience personally with you and Terry. Really powerful on understanding that disconnect, because obviously
Mhm.
you would want to work together, but that miss was causing a lot of friction. Thank you for
Right.
sharing that. And
So
those,
that, what's true for a relationship like that in a marriage, and whether you're working together or not, that happens all the time in teams and across the organization. So really, really important awareness and stuff for how you show up and how other people experience you.
and those statistics are fascinating that you said 75% are either SFs or STs. And so realizing if you don't know your team, maybe you can know your team and exactly what they are, but understanding you
Mhm.
do need to make those bridges so you are
Mhm.
connecting. That's fantastic. So, as you have walked people through and coached people through discovering their type, what are some of the common aha moments that really tend to stand out for people?
One of the things I love about walking someone through Myers Briggs is that moment when those four individual preferences, they're not just four individual preferences, but it's when those four separate letters come together and they start working together as a whole picture. And that's when real aha moments happen. I think I shared this example already, but I was coaching a leader not long ago. He was an extrovert, so his most developed preference was thinking. For him, that played out in his outer world, extroverted, meaning like he processed his thoughts by talking them out with other people. And that's just kind of how he was wired. But here's where it really got interesting for him. His second most developed preference was sensing. And that was what he used in his inner world, which meant that to be truly healthy, he actually needed quiet time alone to think, time alone to gather information, to sit with his data. So, what had been happening for him, he realized that whenever things got hard or uncomfortable, he instinctively ran toward people. And so, while that felt natural, like even good, he was starting to feel a lot of burnout. And that actually, I was going to people because he was an extrovert
Mm.
actually was keeping him from doing some of that deeper internal work that he needed to do. He realized he was actually using people to cope rather than really to lean in to his growth. That when we put those letters together and how to think about health and stress responses, that was a real genuine aha moment for him. So we made a really simple, significant change for him, and he started to carve out 2 hours each week to be alone, just to think, to research, to process quietly. Then in health, he could bring what he was learning to his safe people and kind of talk that through.
Mm.
It seems like such a small shift on paper, but for him, it was a huge difference between managing discomfort versus actually growing more healthy through it.
That's fantastic. So, Steve, you've shared a little bit about your journey as we've been chatting today, but how has your understanding of your own type really shaped the way you approach your own growth over time?
Mm, yeah. I may have mentioned earlier, my preferences are INFP. It's a future oriented, creative voice,
Mhm.
keeping options open, get a gut feel for things. Honestly, understanding that has really given me a lot of freedom. It's helped me stop apologizing for the ways I'm wired and start leaning into them. For example, writing my first novel, like, The Summit Within, blogging, doing some creative work, even not leading a team now, adding a creative perspective, coming alongside others on the team. That kind of creative work is not a distraction or like a side hobby from my calling. They're really an expression of how God has made me. My most developed function is what's called introverted feeling. In practical terms, that means I need a safe place to process what's going on inside me. And for me, I discovered that journaling really helped with that. And I've journaled for most of 40 years as a follower of Christ. But now I really understand why it's been so life giving for me. It's not just habit, it's really how I stay healthy and process some of the things that are going on inside me so I don't show up and just blow up. But here's the other side of that coin. My least developed preference is extroverted thinking. May or may not understand these terms, but when you get a report, you get all this information and it's fascinating. So, in the extroverted thinking is actually where I go when I'm under stress, but to the negative side of that. So, I remember a walk Terry and I were on. I was just complaining. I don't remember what it was, just kind of spewing out critical thoughts about situations, about other people, and, about myself that can come out as condemning when I'm really, really under stress. But before the middle of it, something just clicked. And I just stopped and I said, I must really be stressed out right now.
Mm.
Myers Briggs helped me recognize what my stressors are in my thoughts, in my words, in my body, and my habits. And the gift of knowing your type isn't just to recognize that symptom. I knew at that moment when I said I must be really stressed out right now, I knew exactly what I needed to do to get back to a healthy spot. And that's where the self awareness through the Myers Briggs really given me a map back to myself, but a healthy version of myself.
I like that picture of a map that you were able to see, oh, I'm over here in extroverted thinking. For me, this is my stress behavior. And so that put you over here on the map to realize, how do I get back to where I am? It was
Hmm.
that indicator light, if you will, on a car that says,
Yeah.
check your engine.
Yeah.
And you were able to recognize that. I think that's a really helpful gift that the Myers
Hmm.
Briggs can give, is to help people see and recognize those behaviors. Again, as you said at the beginning, kind of that feedback tool so people can become more self aware. For someone listening who's curious, what are some good next steps for learning their type and continuing to grow through it?
If you're curious and just want to start to dip your toes in, a great starting point is 16personalities.com. It's free, easily accessible. It will give you a solid introduction to your preferences and your type. I don't see any reason that you could not start there. But if you're more serious about health and growth, especially if you're part of a team, I would encourage you to take that a step further and take the official assessment with a certified Myers Briggs coach. The authentic official instrument tends to have greater validity and reliability. But more importantly, a coach isn't going to just hand you your results or send them to you and then send you on your way. That's actually a piece I feel most strongly about. You don't just stop at the results. The assessment is really a starting point. It's not the end result or the destination. So initiate with someone, sit down with a certified coach who can help verify your type. Because remember, the assessment can get you wrong
Mm.
and there's different nuances to it. But the coach can help you understand what it looks like to stay healthy in your particular type, your unique type, as well as to recognize when you're slipping into stress patterns. So the goal isn't just to know your four letters. The goal is to know yourself better, lead yourself better, and ultimately to serve the people around you better. So getting the letters are just the beginning of that conversation.
That's great. And we'll make sure we put a link to 16 personalities in our show notes. And if people want to find out more, they can always write the llama, LLAMA, at crew.org to find out more about how to get a coach and go through that. Lastly, Steve, whether someone has taken the Myers Briggs or before or not, what's one mindset shift you'd hope they walk away with after today's conversation?
I'd love for people to have this shift that your personality is not a prison.
Mm.
It's not an excuse, but it's a doorway. And again, I love what Steve Cuss says, self awareness is just the door. Myers Briggs can be a beautiful key to that door. But once you walk through it, the real work is going to begin for you. So whether you've taken the assessment and maybe have forgotten your letters, or whether you're hearing about it for the first time today in this podcast, approach the process with curiosity and humility. Use it to grow in compassion for yourself, first of all, and for the people around you who are probably wired differently than you are. I would also say, Beth, that your type is not your identity. It's a tool for understanding. The real you is so much bigger, more glorious than the four letters. Let's talk about this at the beginning of what I hope that people would get out of the time. I asked them, what would you like to get out of our coaching appointment? And then I also add this: when God created Adam and Eve in the garden, the very first thing he said, you remember, because he created all these different days and it was good and it was good and it was good. After creating Adam and Eve, what did he say? Very good. So we hear a lot of criticism. We hear a lot about sin. We're aware of that. We're aware of our brokenness, our weaknesses, and everything. But the deepest and most ancient truth about us, about our hearts, is that we are very good because we are made in the image of God. Or as David said in Psalm 139, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. There's an original glory about us, how God has knit you together in your mother's wombs and wired you that has a unique way that you express the creativity and the image of God. And the Apostle Paul also said this as well, that we are God's workmanship. In the Greek is the word poema. We're God's poem that He has uniquely and intricately woven together. And Myers Briggs can help you begin to see a little bit of what that is like.
Thanks, Steve. What a beautiful way to wrap us up today. That we are very good because we are created in the image of God, and that Myers Briggs can be a helpful tool, not defining our identity, but to understanding how God has created us. Well, thank you so much for all that you've shared with us today and joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Beth, for having me.
As you reflect on your own personality, whether you know your type or are just beginning to explore it, what might it look like to grow on purpose through a deeper understanding of how you're made? How is knowing your Myers Briggs type a key to opening the doorway of self-awareness? And what's one intentional step you could take this week to grow in it? If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, as it will help us get the word out. We have so much more exciting content coming your way. See you next time.